All right, so let's try this again. I recorded this whole explanation yesterday without sound, so I'm going to try it again. Hopefully this time we have some sound. I have attempted here to record myself and my monitor at the same time. It seems to be working, and it's cool because I can switch from just recording myself to recording my monitor and myself. Hopefully this time my monitor, myself, and my words. So as you can see, I did a poll to see what I should explain next. What won was that I should just tell another story. But a close second was to tell the daddy long legs. And then also whether the chicken or the egg came first, which I would refer you to any 8th grade evolution teacher to answer that one. The differences between SARS, MERS, Ebola, COVID-19, and H1N1, I believe, is still sitting at 1 vote. So just tell another story 1. But I don't want to do that. I want to talk about daddy long legs. So I'm going to do that instead because this is the real world, and you don't always get what you want by taking a poll. That doesn't matter in the real world. What matters is what I want to do because I'm awesome. So I'm going to tell about daddy long legs because I think it's really interesting. So the question is, it was posed by a Mr. Doherty down in the threadaways. Are daddy long legs really poisonous? Now I've heard this a few different times in a few different ways. I've heard that daddy long legs are the most poisonous spider in the world, but their mouths are too small to bite us. I've heard that they're very poisonous, but their fangs are too short to actually penetrate human skin. And I've heard it from several different places. I don't like take a log of everywhere I hear it, but I'm sure most of you have heard this as well. That daddy long legs are an incredibly venomous spider. So to answer this question, I went to a really cool website, which if you ever want to know anything about spiders, you're going to want to go here. And that website is spiders.ucr.edu. The University of California, Riverside has a whole unit that is just entomologists. Now, to my lasting chagrin and disappointment, an entomologist does not study ants, they study bugs. So these guys study bugs, that's what they do. These people have PhDs in studying spiders. I don't know if you guys know this, but a PhD takes like 7 years to get. These guys, 7 years just talking about spiders. So I figured if anybody knows whether daddy long legs is actually the most poisonous spider in the world, these guys at the University of California, Riverside would know. So I looked it up, and sure enough, they have a whole page just dedicated to daddy long legs. Now the issue here is, the question isn't as simple as it seems, because daddy long legs can refer to 2 different things. There are daddy long legs, also known as harvestmen, and there are daddy long legs spiders, also known as daddy long legs spiders. They just have the one name, which are spiders with really long legs. And it turns out that daddy long legs, not daddy long leg spiders, but daddy long legs, harvestmen, are not even spiders. They're a completely different thing. So in arachnids, you have several families. You have the scorpiones, which, as you can imagine, are scorpions. You have the opilionids, or the opiliones, called opilionids, which are the harvestmen, and there are a lot of them. There are many, many different kinds. And then you have aranea, which is spiders. In Spanish, it's araña, aranea, which are spiders. And actually, daddy long legs in, daddy long legs family is actually, the opiliones are actually more related to the scorpiones. I'm going to draw a little picture here to kind of show you the difference between what a daddy longlegs spider is going to look like and what a daddy longlegs is going to look like. Most of the time when we see a daddy longlegs, what we call a daddy longlegs, we're seeing a daddy longlegs spider. Because the daddy longlegs themselves generally live under logs, under rocks, things like that. They're not where we often see them. What you see down in your basement and places like that, often a daddy longlegs spider. It's just a really long-legged spider. The way to know whether you're looking at an opilionid or a spider is by the way their body's built. So I'm going to draw something here. Hopefully we can do a good job here. So first I'm going to draw what a standard spider looks like. A spider is going to have this head portion, have up to 8 eyes, right? These boys just really like their eyeballs. And they're going to have this big fat abdomen, right? Sometimes it's not that fat, but it's going to be bigger than the head portion. And then coming out of this front portion, they're going to have their 8 legs, right? Let me draw that one a little bit better. All right. And then on the other side, obviously, some more legs. Okay. This is your standard Spidey boy. Up to 8 eyes, many eyes, big fat abdomen, all the legs coming out of this front portion here that contains the eyes, okay? Now, if you're looking at a daddy longlegs versus a daddy longlegs spider, you're going to see just a subtle difference here. These guys, little body like this, okay? Got a little body. They're going to have up to 2 eyes. Now, it says up to 2. There may be some that have no eyes. There may be some that have 1 eye. I don't really know how that works. But they don't have, at any rate, they don't have any more than 2 eyes, okay? So here's our little Pilione body, right? He does not have a second section. He's just going to have the one section. And coming out along here, he's going to have these legs that look pretty similar. You know, they still got 2 joints. They're still super creepy. Okay, he's still going to have 8 of them, but only up to 2 eyes and a single little body shape, right? With legs coming kind of evenly spaced along that body. Now, if you think about the way that this guy's body is compared to, what a spider looks like, it makes sense that they're actually more closely related to scorpion. Because if you think about a scorpion, scorpion's got roughly the same shape of body, right? He's got his little eyes, and then he's going to have, his nasty little tail boy right here. That's really the difference, and then he's going to have these little things right here. His 8 legs, right? So there's my scorpion. What's interesting is opilionids also have the same little arms that a scorpion has. Scorpion's got those big pinchers on the front. Opilionid has that, but his just hang out like that. They look like fangs, but they're not actually fangs. These are just little hands that he uses to scoop food into his mouth like a little crab, right? Spiders have the same thing. A lot of spiders have the same thing. A lot of times we think that's the fangs, but usually the fangs are actually behind those, right? They're in the mouth. And those are little hands. It's part of what makes them in the family. If you go up past arachnids to the family, you got shrimp, you got horseshoe crabs, you got all kinds of stuff in that family. All of them have these little hands. Crabs, you see them with the little hands, different shapes and sizes. So you got your spider, 8 eyes, little mandible hands, 8 legs, got a big old booty on him. Opilionid, single segment, 8 legs, very long legs. Still what look like fangs, but are actually little hands. Now, to answer the question, are they poisonous? the way they usually figure out whether something's poisonous or not, whether a spider's poisonous or not to humans, is if a human's been bitten by it. If there's a lot of cases of humans being bitten by it, then they're going to know that they're dangerous to humans. Now, in this case, the myth says, well, their mouths are too small to bite a human. So the other way that they measure the venom of spiders is they empty out their poison sacs and then they inject it into a mouse, which is like a horrible job to have as a mouse, to get injected by spider venom, figure out what it's going to do to you, right? In the case of daddy long leg spiders, right? These guys. In the case of daddy long leg spiders, there's no cases of them ever having bitten a human. And nobody has ever studied the toxicity or the venom that they have. So there's absolutely no scientific evidence backing up that these are the most poisonous spider for the spiders. As far as their fangs not being big enough to penetrate human skin, they're roughly the same size as that of a wolf spider, and wolf spiders can penetrate skin and are poisonous to humans. So that one's completely debunked. If they wanted to bite you, they could. They just don't want to because they don't want to eat you because you're not their natural prey. And we don't really know how venomous they are, but nobody's ever been bitten by one. At least nobody's ever been bitten by one that's been documented, which means if they did bite someone, it probably wasn't that big of a deal, and so they just let it go. Now, as far as your Apilionid, this guy right here, or the true daddy longlegs or harvest man, they actually don't have poison sacs at all. They're completely non-venomous. They can't poison anyone. So that brings me to my other point, which I think is just incredibly fascinating. Why is it that with zero scientific evidence at all, many of us out there had heard and believed that daddy longlegs are the most poisonous spider, they just can't bite us? What would lead us to believe that? It turns out that the more you hear something, when you hear something over and over and over again, your brain begins to categorize that as true just because it's familiar. This is called the illusory truth effect, right? Because it's an illusion of truth, the illusory truth effect. And this can happen in a lot of different ways. And they've actually done studies where they look at different people with different cognitive styles, like people who just go by their gut and people who are very analytical. And there's no difference in the effect of the illusory truth effect on those people. So me, I consider myself pretty analytical. I like to be looking into things. I like to be trying to find the evidence behind things. It turns out that's not really going to help me with the illusory truth effect. Knowing that something is false, also, they've done studies where you disregard what you actually know in favor of what's familiar, right? So I may know that spiders, the daddy longlegs, not only aren't spiders but aren't poisonous, and yet over time I'm going to lose that knowledge. I'm going to gravitate to what I've heard over and over again. So with that being said, I just want to tell everybody that I am the best at everything, right? I'm going to repeat that in every video that I make, because then you will start to believe that is truth. So the way this is one of the biases that is most difficult for us to overcome, because our brain, the portion of our brain that categorizes truth, is no different from the portion of our brain that categorizes familiarity, right? So if I hear a lie many, many times and that lie is familiar to me, for example, eating carrots will help your eyesight. Not true, right? But it's categorized in my brain in the same place as things that are true. So when I hear it, my brain reaches back in there and it says, yeah, that checks out. That's familiar. That's in the truth, right? So, with things like carrots are good for your eyes, or spiders are poisonous or not poisonous, a lot of those things don't really matter. But there are things that do matter, like when politicians or candidates repeat the same lies over and over again, or try to change our perception of what actually happened, that can have an effect, because it can actually make our brains disregard what we know is truth and believe something that isn't true just because it's familiar. I believe that's what causes a lot of the divisions that we have, is because people watch CNN or people watch Fox News, right? And they don't ever look at the other side. They just listen to the same thing over and over again, saying the same stuff, each side only saying it's one. And they stop being able to look at what's actually happening. They begin to perceive as truth just what they've heard said over and over again, right? Um, it, I find this absolutely fascinating. And like I said, it's one of the most difficult ones to overcome in ourselves, is this illusory truth effect. So what I try to do, and what I've tried to do ever since I learned about this a couple years ago, is when I hear something that strikes me as true, like I just automatically accept it as true, which is hard to recognize. I've found that it's very hard to recognize. But when you hear something and you just think, oh yeah, that's right, well, I like to pause and I like to think, why do I think that's right? Do I know that it's right? Or do I just feel that it's right? Because if I can't pinpoint, like I know this is right because I looked it up and I've read the facts and I've seen why it's right, if I'm just feeling it's right, that's probably because it's an illusory truth, right? That is, it's probably the illusion of truth because it's familiar to me. Maybe I've heard it. Maybe it was on the radio one time and my brain picked that up and categorized it and said, I've heard this before. And I heard it again and I heard it again, and then I start to think that it's true. So just be careful when you're out there and you hear something, anything, any kind of fact, and it just kind of sounds true to you. Just pause a second, maybe ask the person that said that to you, how do you know that that's true? And if they don't know why they know it's true, then maybe you should look into it and figure out if it really is true. Because otherwise, you could just be passing on sometimes a very detrimental truth. Um, I think of people having seizures, and a lot of people believe you're supposed to stick a spoon in their mouth, right, to hold so they don't swallow their tongue. And a lot of people have been injured by people who believed that was true without ever really thinking about why is it true. Um, Anyway, so that's my video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Short answer is no, daddy longlegs spiders and daddy longlegs, either one of the two, not poisonous to humans. And at least in the case of daddy longlegs spiders, they could bite you if they wanted to. They just don't want to.